have a look and see what is making the front pages with Elena.
Hello again, Stuart. Well, usually I start with a presidential campaign update, but today the French papers have been a little bit more distracted with international news. Look at this front page from Libération, SOS Syria. Very strong picture there of a woman on the Lebanese border crying there. Now, inside the paper, they say that no one is spared in Syria from the murderous rage of a ferocious and corrupt dictatorship, and that the international community should be ashamed that they've let so long pass before this got to a vote at the UN. They say the fact that the Arab League, which they call, has been in the past, a tyrant's club, is now backing a resolution for Assad to go, shows that no leader in the Middle East can now conduct himself with impunity and murder and torture his own citizens. So it's a very strongly worded editorial there. But they do point out inside that Assad still has some advantages. We can't necessarily assume he will be pushed out by any of this diplomatic manipulation. Firstly, the Arab League plan that's on the table relies on the assumption that if he did agree to give up power, then that there are people within his government, within his regime, who might be amenable to lead a democratic transition. The paper says there's no evidence that would actually happen. The high command in Syria still remains very united behind Assad. Then there's the fact that he still has quite a lot of international support from Iran, which is a major regional player, and indeed from Iraq, which of course supports Iran at the moment and takes over the Arab League rotating presidency in the summer. So the diplomatic forces aren't necessarily all against Assad.
And other international stories making the French paper, Senegal this time.
Exactly. At Senegal, the Abdoulaye Wade, of course, refusing to give up power, insisting he's going to stand again for a third time in that election, which has sparked demonstrations on the streets in Dakar. That's on the front page of Le Monde, which have this very strongly worded editorial, again headlined, "Just retire, Mr. Wade." Now, they say despite judicial opinion, despite warnings from Europe and American allies, despite his age, he's 86, he's insisting on presenting himself again at those elections. They point out that Senegal is one of the few African countries that hasn't seen any coups since independence, and they say it would be a shame if an old man's vanity was allowed to get in the way of the country's democratic record. They also point out that his record as president hasn't been great. They say human rights standards, civil liberties, and indeed economic inequality, living standards in Senegal have all declined since Wade has been in power.
And if it's not French politics, as you alluded to earlier, it's corruption cases that you're always talking about. I know they're interlinked, but you've got corruption cases on the front of the papers again.
One of our long-standing corruption cases is back, Stuart. It's in here in the Parisien. It's Karachi Gate again. Of course, that's the investigation into who killed 11 French engineers who died in a bomb attack in Karachi in 2002. The suspicion is that was a revenge attack for when President Chirac cancelled kickbacks on Pakistani arms deals. Now, Le Parisien's exclusive bit of information today is that investigators are going to talk to 2 policemen who apparently covered up a coroner's report that was made at the time. Now, the coroner's report says, apparently, that the bomber was not a suicide attack, that that's not what the evidence shows, and so that sort of discredits the idea that it was an Islamic terrorist attack and puts more fuel behind the idea that it was indeed to do with these kickbacks.
Intriguing stuff. Let's get to the French politics then. Presidential campaign.
Yep, got to have a campaign update, otherwise it wouldn't be a press review. So, Canard enchaîné, they're attacking Nicolas Sarkozy yet again. They've got India might be buying 126 Rafale planes, but Sarkozy is still on an ejector seat. Of course, he's been attacked from pretty much every angle this week, as he seems to be quite behind the curve, falling down in the polls, and even on his own side, they're attacking his tactics. The Figaro, though, have still come up with some advantages he might have to take on Hollande. They've managed to find an opinion poll that shows that the majority of French people think that he's best placed to cut the deficit. Unfortunately, the same opinion poll puts Hollande ahead on half a dozen other criteria, like improving education and improving the reforms in the economy of France. But nevertheless, the paper says that Sarkozy is just suffering the same electoral fate of anyone who puts in major reforms, which is that the public take a while to get used to these things. The problem is, of course, that Sarkozy hasn't got time to allow the public to get used to anything. He's got an election in 3 months. And L'Humanité also attacking his reforming policy here. Their correspondents have been to the Ruhr Valley in Germany, investigating the industrial policies there that Sarkozy said on Sunday night that he was so keen to copy. And they say that actually that's just, it might not have increased unemployment, but it sent wages down and increased insecurity.
Makes a change. French politics at the end. All right, Elena, thanks very much, Elena Casas, with the newspaper review here on France 24. Here's the headlines.